Hi everybody, in today's video we're going to be going over your first potential snowstorm of the fall season. This is going to be a high elevation event for parts of the Northwest, so areas like Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, and Colorado. Some areas could be even approaching 6 or more inches of snowfall. This is going to be happening primarily between the 18th and about the 21st when this should be taking place, maybe lingering in to the 22nd. So we're going to be covering this, we're going to be looking at why this is happening, what's leading to this, and also briefly touching on the temperature patterns alongside this. We're going to have moderate snowfall, especially for some of the areas around northwestern Wyoming near Yosemite, and also into parts of central Idaho, southern Montana, and then also into some parts of northeastern Wyoming, southeastern Montana. Again, high elevation areas, light snow may cover the lower lying areas of central Montana, central Wyoming, and then eventually into the Rockies of Colorado is where we could be dealing with a bit more light snow lingering down there. So again, it is an exciting video because it is our first snow event that we're talking about of the year. I'm not going to have your snowfall forecast for today's video, but and that's just because we're a little bit too far out for me to put out a snowfall forecast. But as we get closer to the event, we're looking at probably over the next 3 or 4 days. Once we get a little bit closer to the event, I'll have a detailed snowfall forecast for this area. So a lot of information to go over in today's video. So let's get right into it, and let's start off with your current National Weather Service page. As you can see, we have some excessive heat warnings in parts of Nevada, Arizona, and California, with some tropical storm warnings for that tropical storm Nicholas down in coastal Texas. I believe those are a few tropical storm watches, if I'm not mistaken, as well. Up in Texas, we have some flood watches, also along the coastal part of Louisiana and Texas, and then some red flag warnings scattered throughout the western United States. Other than that, we don't have many other watches or warnings. Would not be surprised if within the next 5 days we get a few winter weather advisories potentially to be put up here. I would not expect too many winter storm warnings because the criteria in high elevation areas such as central Idaho, southern Montana, northwestern Wyoming is a little bit higher. For the rest of the lower lying areas of the country, usually it's just 6 inches of snowfall or higher. Some parts of the southeast, the southern plains, it's maybe just an inch for some areas. Like for example, Houston, I believe it's only about an inch of snowfall required to produce a winter storm warning. The criteria changes around the country, but usually it's 6 or more inches for a winter storm warning. In this case, with the high elevation areas, it's going to probably take 12, maybe 24 inches to require a winter storm warning. So I would expect more winter weather advisory type of warnings to be put up. And again, this is not a huge event, but it is interesting nonetheless, just because it is our first snow event. Looking at yesterday's high temperature is 114 degrees in Death Valley, California, and then 14 miles west-southwest of McKay, Idaho, they got down to 26 degrees Fahrenheit. The highest rainfall report was in Canal Point, Florida, where they got 3.05 inches of rainfall. No snowfall reports yesterday. So let's go on to the European model, and we're going to use this one to time it out. Now, one thing that I don't like too much about the longer range European model is that it doesn't do too well with pinpointing exactly where that snowfall is. The map here is not going to really show it too well. This is the best I could find to represent this, but you're going to see kind of these little squares of snow and mixed precipitation in the pink and the blue. But a greater area than what's being shown on the map is probably dealing with snowfall. It's just not being picked up on this image. And that's what happens when you're a little bit farther out. Once we get the short range models, they're very good at picking out the snowfall. So I'll start to show those a little bit more. But unfortunately, we're too far out of this event to actually see that happen right now. So what we're going to see is a first initial surge of rainfall for parts of the Northwest. So we're going to have in parts of Washington, British Columbia, and Idaho, we're going to see some of that rainfall surge in. And this is because of a trough which is digging into Western Canada. So this trough is digging into the Northwest or the Pacific coast, and that's going to continue to move on along further to the southeast. As that comes in, it's going to bring with it some cooler air, and that pocket of maybe just 10 to 15 degrees below normal Fahrenheit temperatures is going to allow for some of that snowfall and mixed precipitation to develop, especially in the higher elevation areas. So we're talking about possibly 8,000 plus feet up, probably a little bit higher than that. I would say 9 or 10,000 feet up. It's going to depend, of course. I would say if you get into central Idaho, Montana, it's going to be a little bit lower of an elevation bar than if you're in Colorado. In Colorado, I would say probably 10,000 plus feet. You want to be up to get some of that snowfall, but it's going to be an elevation event. It's not going to be one of those events where Denver, let's say, is getting snowfall, or at least that doesn't look likely as of right now. You may see, again, some of these areas, especially in higher elevation regions, getting most of the snow. So it's mostly rainfall up to this point. Some of these higher elevation, very high elevation peaks in parts of Washington might be getting a little bit of snow, but the entire storm, for the most part, dealing with just rainfall. But it is borderline. So these temperatures are around 40 degrees in the mountains up to this point. If we move this on, rainfall continues to slide on further to the southeast. And then this is when you start to get some of that snowfall. So this would be for Sunday, well, actually more Saturday night into Sunday morning, and that would be the 19th. You can see that we are starting to deal with some snow potentially developing up into parts of Montana and Idaho. And if we look at this here, you can start to see that continues to slide further to the southeast. You have some isolated areas getting light snowfall. What you're going to see is that this initial band starts to die out a little bit, and you're going to get another resurgence of moisture off of the Pacific coast. So this is going to be moving again further to the southeast. It's going to be a two-part event. You're going to have in parts of Idaho, Oregon, Washington, that first band moved through for Saturday into Sunday morning, and then Sunday morning into Monday, we're going to get another kind of reload of precipitation, and that's going to be the one that moves all the way into Montana, Wyoming, and Colorado, and Idaho as well. So that's when those areas will get the bulk of that snowfall from this event. So you can see we regroup here with most of that moisture staying fairly far to the west. It's not yet getting too far interior. It's not getting to the areas that are going to be dealing with most of the snow later in the event. It does turn colder by Monday early morning or Sunday late in the night. So this would be the 19th into the 20th. And you can see that we do have some snow setting up for central Idaho, parts of western Montana, and that's kind of a signature of some of the colder air which is pushing in overnight on Monday. So now you're seeing widespread snowfall. Something that you want to pay attention to is this red line right here. So, for example, right here, anywhere inside of this black outline that I just drew has 32 degree Fahrenheit or lower temperatures. That's usually your freezing temperatures, and everybody knows that. But sometimes you can get snowfall at 34, 35 degrees. So you don't have to look at this as you have to be inside that line to get snowfall. There is some wiggle room. You can be at 35 degrees and still be snowing. But generally, it is getting fairly chilly for these areas. Even for these areas, you're not, this is still 10 or 15 degrees below normal. And I know a lot of people think of central Idaho, southern Montana, and northwestern Wyoming, really high elevation. They must get snow 24/7 all year long. And while that is mostly true, they do get a break June, July, and August. And it is still going to require some work even into mid-September to get them some snowfall. They're still going to need to be below normal. Their temperatures on an average are still not yet below 32 for a wide enough or for a long enough time to receive regular snowfall. So it does still require some work to get these areas some snowfall, even though, again, they are so high up in elevation. Still snowing into Monday early afternoon. Let's shift this over now to the more of a Wyoming, Colorado view, because this is where the storm is shifting over to. By the way, we will be dealing with some thunderstorms potentially into the northern plains as an effect of the storm sliding to the southeast. We'll probably have once we get closer to this event, I'll probably have a video also talking about those effects. But the snowfall is something that we can track a little bit longer out than we can with the severe weather. So if we move this on, you can see now that snowfall is getting potentially down into Colorado by Tuesday morning. It's going to stay mainly into the higher elevations. Again, we're not expecting any lower lying areas to get snowfall out of this Again, it stays in the higher elevations, but it is moderate to heavy at times. That snowfall, lingering rain or snow showers across Wyoming. Even if you're in the lower lying areas, even if you're not dealing with snowfall, it's going to be chilly on Tuesday, which is the 21st. We're looking at actual temperatures, maybe getting into the 30s in the lower lying areas, in the low 40s. So fairly chilly for this time of year, considering that it's still going to be mid-September by that point. If we move this on to Tuesday night into Wednesday morning, the snow gets a little bit more widespread into Colorado, but you're going to see that eventually that kind of just moves along, and this entire system moves away from this little batch of moisture in Colorado and Kansas. So that's going to mean that it's going to eventually just die out from drier conditions growing over the region. If we look at the snowfall map, we're going to look at it first for the Pacific Northwest view, and then we'll look more over Wyoming and Colorado. So we're going to compare the European and the GFS. They're the only two models which really go out far enough for us to see it so far. If we look at the European model here, anywhere in the gray colors, that's up to 2 inches, 2 to 6 inches in the blue colors, 6 to 10 inches in the purples, and then you kind of see these little specks of pink right here. That's where we're dealing with 10 plus inches of snowfall. So if you live up in British Columbia, you could potentially go skiing probably by the end of the month, because we're going to start to see a little bit of snowpack develop up into this area. It's still going to take a while for most of the lower mountain tops to get some of that snowfall, but definitely some of the higher terrain getting in on some of the decent amounts of snowfall up near 1.5 feet. If we get down into Montana, Idaho, Wyoming, we're dealing with mainly 2 to 6 inches of snowfall, but the highest peaks could be looking at getting maybe closer to 6 inches, maybe up to 8 inches of snowfall. This is a very localized event because of how the Pacific Northwest is set up, where you have, of course, these little grooves and ridges within the elevation map, where you have some higher elevation areas next to valleys right beside it. So it is very elevation dependent, and that's going to make it hard to draw up a map. I will still try to draw one up for you guys to give you a good idea of what's happening, but it is definitely more complicated in the Northwest just because of all the elevation changes. If you look at the GFS, one thing I do notice is that there's not as much into Idaho, northern Idaho, and into northern and northwestern Montana. So not as much snowfall up to that area. You can see that it is a little bit more widespread into Idaho, Wyoming, maybe even down into Utah, and also into northern Colorado. If we give you the view of Colorado and Wyoming, starting off the GFS, you can see that it is still giving it some amount of snowfall. You're looking at maybe 1 to 2 inches in Colorado and Wyoming. For the higher elevations, we're looking at 4 to 8 inches. In the lower lying spots, we're looking at maybe up to an inch or two. And by the way, some of that will melt upon contact. So even if it says an inch or two for your area, know that it is still September, so not all of that is really going to stick. You would want to wait until maybe October for most of that to really stick and to accumulate a little bit better. If you look at the European model, a little bit more high definition, you can see that carries on the snowfall even down into the southern Colorado mountains. Again, all higher elevation snow until you get up into Wyoming. So we're not expecting anything in areas like Denver. We're not expecting anything in areas like Boulder, Colorado. It looks like this will be strictly confined to those high elevation regions. There may be a few exceptions, but for right now, that's what we're expecting. If we look at why this is happening, we're going to have to look at the upper air map. And because this is happening in the Northwest, it's actually better to look at what's happening in Canada because the Canada view is actually really good to get a good view of what's happening over the majority of North America. And this is going to be the type of this is going to be the area that you want to watch for when it comes to the winter time, because when you're getting into the winter, your snowstorms, for the most part, for most snowstorms, are not originating in, let's say, the southern half of the United States. Most of them are going to come from the Northwest, depending on the exact storm. But for the majority of them, most of them will come out of the Northwest and then either dip into the South or kind of stay into the Midwest, the Great Lakes, and then they're going to move wherever they're going to move. But they're mainly going to originate up into the Pacific Northwest, and then from there they'll again, they'll dip down, they'll move up, whatever they'll do after that. But you want to pay attention to this area because it's very pivotal. You have so much moisture moving into this area at any one given point that you can easily get one or two storms to disconnect from that broad area of moisture and move on to the southeast, and that's how you get most of your winter storms. And that's exactly what we're going to see here. We have a big upper level trough which is digging into the northwest and into central and western Canada as we get into Sunday. So this is the 500 millibar map. You can see that we do have a ridge into the eastern United States. It will actually get a little bit warm for the next probably 2 or 3 weeks for these areas. It might switch a little bit into October, but we'll talk about that in an upcoming video. If we look at for Monday, so we just looked at Sunday, which was the 19th. If we look at the 20th for Monday, you can see that what happens, and I'll actually go back on here. So if we go back, this is what we're looking at for Sunday. You have that low pressure up here, and then you have another one trying to develop right here. So what ends up happening is that by Monday, this initial low pressure, which was further to the north, moves all the way out into Ontario and Quebec and into James Bay, that general area into eastern Canada. And then we have this one, which kind of stalls out a little bit, but dips into parts of Montana and Idaho. So now it's disconnected from that whole upper feature, and it's able to move on its own. And then if we look at for Tuesday, which would be the 21st, you can see that it completely isolates itself. You have ridging building back into the northwest, which is the only reason that that's getting pushed out further to the east. So now you have this trough into Wyoming and some of the surrounding states, and that's going to continue to pull on to the east. The only reason that this is happening is because this disconnected from that upper level trough. If we just had that trough kind of just sitting there and nothing really pushed off of it, then you would have that staying there for, I would say, probably another week or two. So it would probably be a very rainy week or two for the northwest and western Canada. But because of this storm, which pulled off from it, that kind of made the whole system move on to the east. And that's the reasoning behind why this is happening in the upper air. Again, I'm a big proponent of the upper air maps. I think they're way more useful than anything that you'll see on the surface maps, especially this far out. If we look at the temperature anomaly maps, this is also quite staggering. We're dealing with really cold temperatures, or fairly cold, well, compared to normal, they're fairly cold in parts of the northwest. This would be from Monday into Tuesday, so the 20th into the 21st. You can see the signature of that upper trough on the surface temperature anomaly maps. So we're dealing with, at least as of right now, looking at between about 10 and 20 degrees Fahrenheit below normal. And again, you think of these areas and you think, wow, they're usually really cold. They're probably already below freezing. But in reality, it's going to take a little bit of time. Even for the highest of peaks, it's going to take a little bit of time to get below freezing over these areas. But usually once you get into October, they're solidly within those colder temperatures. So it's not going to take a lot to get that snowfall. But at this time of year, into mid and late September, still will take some amount of work and some amount of cold air to spawn up a snow event into these areas. So over the next couple of days, I'll be developing my snowfall forecast. We have a bunch of new graphics and for this winter, so hopefully you guys are going to enjoy those. We're going to be, again, putting out those snowfall forecasts pretty much for every single snow event that comes across the United States. And I'll probably have one out for this system, I would say within the next 3 or 4 days, because I want to wait a little bit until we're closer to the event. But once we get closer to the event, I will have a snowfall forecast out on this event, and I'll try and make it as detailed as possible, since I know there's big differences in the snowfall based on what elevation you're at. Again, just to review, we're looking at some colder temperatures between the 21st and 27th for the western United States, and then for the rest of the country, it looks like you're going to be a little bit warmer between that 8 to 14 day time frame. So warmer in the east and central and colder in the west, and that's how it's going to be for the next week or two. So that is going to wrap it up for today's video. I'll see you guys in the next one. If you have any questions, leave a comment down below, and I'll be responding within a few hours. So again, I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.